everyone, this is PK Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and this will be my full review of Alien Earth Season 1. Now there are going to be spoilers throughout, so just beware when going into this overall video. So as we all know, Alien Earth was the latest entry in the famous sci-fi horror franchise, which began way back in 1979, with Ridley Scott's revered first movie, which is still the best entry in the franchise, and was recently invigorated with the Alien Romulus film released back in 2023. Now, the latest series here consisted of overall 8 episodes and debuted on the Hulu streaming platform. Ultimately, it takes place after Alien Romulus, but before the first Alien movie. And the overall concept here was we were involved with a universe that was governed by several corporations, the two most prominent ones being the Weyland Yutani, which we all famously know from the previous installments, and also Prodigy. And the story involved a ship named US Magnots, which featured a crew of synthetic beings who were monitoring a whole ship contained full of alien organisms on a long expedition, and they were due to bring back them to the Weyland company for further research. And this ship ends up being attacked by alien on board, and it crash lands on Earth within the section of the planet owned by Prodigy, who quickly take ownership of the crash site and ultimately try to capture the specimens on board and do their own research. We were also introduced to a group of synthetic beings who were created by Prodigy. These were young children who had specific bodies that were inhabiting the consciousness of other young children who were terminally ill. These synthetic bodies would have certain special abilities, and we would see the synthetic beings very much have like a childlike manner, recreated based on the Lost Boys from Peter Pan. And over the course of the season, we will see them develop certain fears and dilemmas and emotions, as we would see an overall battle to control the crash site and also the specimens that were on board. So when I look at Alien Earth overall, I think despite some interesting ideas and concepts, it overall proved to be a disappointing series. And it really confirmed my major concern when I first heard of its concept. And that was the fact that when we look at the Alien movies overall in the franchise and the best installments, notably the first two, what makes Alien so special is that overall it is a standalone contained story, where primarily we see a group of human characters being trapped in an environment and they're being hunted down by the xenomorph alien. And that's where, of course, we generate a lot of the tension and the suspense and the horror elements. Now, that type of concept really is more suitable for a movie. And we see this of all the classic science fiction horror franchises, whether it indeed be Alien or Terminator or Predator. What makes these concepts so special is that the monster, or indeed the alien in this case, is really a lethal, unrelenting force of evil. We know very little about it, ultimately that it is there to hunt down the human characters. The fact that we know very little adds to the secrecy and also its impact. And as I said, within a movie format that works. But when it comes to a series where you have a set of 8 episodes consisting of around 40 to 50 minutes long, then it's much more difficult to sustain interest. You simply cannot have every episode with the alien hunting down the humans, because that would get very stale. So obviously the writers here tried to add a lot more in terms of the world building and the mythology to justify an overall series. And this is when we get to all of the narratives surrounding the creation of the ships and all of the emotions and feelings and the flashbacks that they go through. We had the narrative of the first hybrid human or synth known as Wendy, and her relationship with her brother known as Joe Hermit, who was acting as a medic for the Prodigy security service. We also had the narrative around the overall control between the Prodigy and the Weyland Yutani. This involved the very implausible CEO or owner of the Prodigy Corporation known as Boy Cavalier, essentially a metaphor, if you like, for a Mark Zuckerberg type of boy genius. We had without question the two best characters of the show, involving Morrow, who was a cyborg aboard the US Magnots ship, the only survivor, and had an unrelenting obsession to retrieve all of the alien organisms for the Weyland Yutani group. And he was contrasted with synthetic being for the Prodigy group known as Kirsch, the scientist who was very much a mentor and trainer for a lot of the other synthetic beings. So there was an effort here to add all of these elements together to justify a long-run series, but sadly none of them really compelled me overall, and that was the biggest problem here. I just had very little interest in any of the characters. A lot of them were very much your typical stereotypes. We had, sadly, Wendy, who fit very much into the cliched girl boss or overcompetent female protagonist. Over the course of the season, we see her being able to develop abilities in terms of communicating with the alien xenomorphs. We see how she's able to control certain systems and also movements of other synthetic beings. And there's very little explanation as to how exactly she gains these powers, other than the fact that she was the first synthetic being created. We could also argue whether she is an actual protagonist, given the fact that she has seemingly control over the aliens and she chooses to assign them out to kill various human and synth characters when we go towards the finale. Once more, there was very little depth or interest in terms of the relationship with her brother, and towards the end of the season, it really didn't amount to much. I also felt that Bald Cavalier was an extremely cliched and completely unbelievable main villain. We did get the reveal near the end of the finale that he created a synthetic body out of his father, who was a drunk, and he ended up killing him. And we learn also that Adrian Edmondson indeed was the guardian, if you like, that was created for this purpose. So the show lacked a lot of the suspense and tension that we would normally associate with Alien. Overall, I would still maintain that the opening episode was the best one, where basically we recreated the tone and the narrative beats of the first Alien film, and we also recreated that to the same degree in the 5th episode, I believe, which was a flashback where we saw how exactly the crew on the US Magnauts was hunted down by the alien. Now, in terms of the visuals, I felt they were mostly okay. In terms of the ship exteriors and design, no problems here. I guess the biggest issue, which has been pointed out by a lot of people, was the actual design of the xenomorphs themselves. Now, when we refer once more to the original first two movies, the first movie in particular, what made that so special was again that you were dealing with tight, confined spaces, which are very darkened and very closed in. So whenever the alien appeared on screen, it really had this imposing and frightening aura about it. There were many times when you wondered how big exactly this alien xenomorph was. The problem with Alien Earth is that we have multiple scenes when the xenomorph is appearing in the daylight, walking around in the forest, so it doesn't have that impact, and in fact it looks way smaller than what you would deem it to be, this huge intimidating force of evil. And we could see clearly that there was a mixture here of CGI and prosthetics that were used for the alien, but it never came across as convincing as what we saw in the early films. It had this real kind of rigid plastic feel to it, again taking away that menace that we would want to associate with the alien. And there were also many plot holes and illogical beats and implausibilities right throughout the series. The fact that the Prodigy is the trillion-dollar company, yet there is a ominous lack of security around these beings who are clearly dangerous, they have very little knowledge about, yet we have multiple containment units that are unguarded, where it's very easy for these aliens to break free and roam around and start killing people. There is no backup in terms of military or security, and again, this is a way distant future, so you would expect really a military presence all over the crash site in order to make sure that nobody could get attacked by these organisms. We look at the synthetics themselves, and predictably, as with all of these shows, when you're dealing with an sophisticated artificial intelligence, they eventually start developing their own feelings and emotions, and when they're strong enough, they decide to uprise and attack their creators. It's a well-worn cliche that we've seen so often now when all of these science fiction shows. You wonder again, where exactly was the kill switch or the contingency to disable these beings if they indeed started running riots or started a rebellion? Again, in a high-tech future like this, you would expect such a backup plan to be devised, but it never came to be. And it was just little elements like that which again undercut the credibility of the show, alongside the fact that once more we had characters all over the place that we had very little investment or development in. And we quickly focus on the finale, which for me was one of the worst episodes of the show, where basically we saw Wendy finally assume we would agree full control of the xenomorph. We saw one xenomorph that was fully grown, and then we saw a baby xenomorph that had killed one of the human scientists on the beach in the previous episodes. We see Wendy capture all of the main characters, whether it was Kirsch or Morrow or Boy Cavalier, holding them all in a jail cell and announcing that they are now going to take over. But when you ask the question, what exactly are they taking over? What exactly do they want to do? How exactly does they control the alien, and what are their intentions going to be? It really left the show at a kind of an open-ended conclusion. Not really sure whether you have any investment for a potential second season, and where exactly would they go this time around, whether they keep these characters or introduce new characters for any second year of the show. And that was it really in terms of the overall series. As I mentioned before, there were interesting ideas, but sadly they didn't really develop on them, and I just think overall the concept of Alien isn't really something that you can really turn into a long running series. I've said for many years now that with the likes of Alien and Terminator and Predator, all of these iconic monster franchises have really hit a ceiling in terms of the multiple sequels that we've had and series and novelizations. I think you've reached an exhaustive point of all of them, of how much you can tell in terms of their story. The more that you delve into their background and their history and their heritage, the more you take away that mystery which made them so compelling and intimidating to watch in the first place. So overall, Alien Earth, despite some good intentions, was overall a big disappointment, and whether we will get a season 2 remains to be seen. I'm not really sure if I would have any interest at all if we do indeed reach that stage. So those are my thoughts and feelings when looking back at the whole season of Alien Earth. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you have any other further movies, television series, or any other topics within the pop entertainment and culture scene that you'd like to see me cover within the channel, then also let me know within the comments, and I will see if I can provide further commentary for you on that subject matter within the future. Please also hit like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.